Okay, welcome to today's Badiou on Badiou course preview. This is also a meeting of GCAS Grand Rapids, GCAS Michigan. We have some people coming up here physically in person from Chicago, Bruce DeMedici, and we have a number of people here from even just in the room from around the area. And then we have a number of people on the Hangout who are interested in the course. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of what we'll do today. We'll start out with basically a reading of Badiou's. Hopefully everybody saw the posted PDFs that were posted in the course Facebook group. They were just short excerpts from Elaine Badiou's Manifesto for Philosophy 1 and Manifesto for Philosophy 2. Those will be presented on by Asfar Hussain, Preston Davis, and myself, although Preston and I will talk a little more generally speaking about Badiou, and Asfar Hussain will talk about those specific readings. And we'll just try to have a general discussion just to kind of broach the general idea of what Badiou offers, philosophy and politics and art and science and love and all the basic conditions of philosophy that he thinks are the most important. And then after that, we will do a Q&A. We're going to try and actually do this whole thing in 1 hour, which might be difficult to do. But we're going to do a Q&A on the course itself, also a Q&A on the upcoming film Badiou A Life, which you may have seen advertisements for. Yeah, and I'm one of the producers of that. Basically, the roles that we have, it's being co-produced with the Global Center for Advanced Studies and Nonetheless Productions. So it's a joint project of both. The director is Gaurav Kalyan, and the two co-producers are Rohan Kalyan, who I went to graduate school with, and myself. So we'll talk more about that later. But yeah, that's the general overview of what we will do today. So maybe we can just start off, just so people are feeling comfortable to speak. Why don't we just start off with a round of introductions and just say what your interest in the course is and what your knowledge of Badiou is at this particular moment. So I'm actually running the tech and kind of emceeing at this moment, so I have to go move the camera. So I'm going to turn the camera around to the room, and we can just start with you two, and then we'll move on to the other parts of the room.
This is the room that Badiou's going to be. This is the room that Badiou's going to be in.
Yes, that's one of the great things about. That was kind of the main idea of this event. Really was to let people actually be in the space that this event will occur in, so I hope that's useful to get some idea of what we're. So I'm going to turn up this a little bit so there's a little more light on everybody. Okay. All right, so yeah, let's just do a round of introductions. So just when you introduce yourself, just say your name, whatever institution you are affiliated with or have been, and then what your knowledge of Badiou is so far and what you hope to get out of the course, or what you are interested in about the course.
Hi, my name is Matthew. I'm finishing up my study at Green Valley right now. I don't have much experience with Badiou at this point, but I'm really looking to pass it on to see how you realistic
And if I could just check in for a minute, are people on the Hangout, were you able to hear that microphone? I'm getting an answer from the chat. Oh, they weren't able to. Yeah, actually, if we could all just sort of group up around here, because I guess. Yeah. or if maybe if people could just if you're just here in this front row, like that would make a big difference. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's basically just the microphone. This is something we'll have fixed for the next time. Cool. Okay, so let's just do a test to make sure everybody can hear each other. So you still have that microphone? Okay. Could you just say test?
Test. Can somebody hear me? From the chat. Yeah.
Okay. It looks like that's working better. Okay, so we'll start out then with a round of introductions, and Matthew, if you don't mind going again. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Matthew. I'm finishing up my studies at Grand Valley right now. I don't have much experience with Badiou at this point, but I hope kind of for the scripts that I'll do just in the greater understanding.
Hi, I'm Amber. I'm not going to be attending the course, but I am interested in Badiou. I'm a French language and Arabic language student at Grand Valley, and I just recently studied abroad in Morocco, which is where he's from, and so I'm interested in how culture affected his philosophy.
I'm Oscar Hussain, and I'm the Vice President of GCAS, and I continue to listen. So I'm here. So,
I'm Samuel Molina. I'm a Kendall alumni. I graduated in 2011. Art history degree. And I'm currently a GCAT student also. Don't know, but I don't know the study of his philosophy, so that's fine.
I'm Isaac. I'm still in society, second one son, and I just had a short introduction to Badiou. So, let's see if that goes over a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm Matthew Davis. I know absolutely nothing about Badiou except for what I'm told. And I am yet to evaluate this week. So.
Okay, and I'm Preston, and it's great to be here. Thanks to Oscar, Jason, and everyone who showed up on this end. Thanks to you all in the chats. So looking forward to the class.
You can hold on to that because I have this one. And I'm Jason Adams, obviously Preston and I are organizing the Badiou on Badiou course. So that's who we are. And then so let's move now to the Hangout, and I'll just, if you don't mind, I'm just going to turn your mics up one by one. Not trying to put you on the spot, but it's kind of the best way to do it. So let's start with Amy. And Amy, if you could just introduce yourself and just say what you're interested in the course is.
I'm Amy. I've taken one of the courses, and through GCAS, and I really don't know anything about Badiou, so I'm just listening in.
Great.
Texas.
Texas. Okay, Thomas Elliott.
Hi, everybody. My name is Thomas Elliott. I'm from Novi, Michigan, and I've read a few of Badiou's work and study philosophy. I actually specialize in Heidegger, but I love Badiou, and I can't wait for this thing.
Right. And there is a really interesting relationship between Heidegger and Badiou, obviously, just from the title being an event, being in time, and that's something that that Oscar has a great interest in too. Okay, so now Ryan Paul.
Hi, my name is Ryan Paul. I am an English professor at Texas A&M Kingsville, or I will be starting this fall. I've read a handful of different pieces by Badiou. I wrote a book review of an introduction to Badiou, key principles or key concepts. Yeah, I'm just really interested in set theory and mathematics and his aesthetic theory, and I'm very excited about the in-person class.
Great. Yeah, we're excited you'll be here too. So Ryan will be here in person. Actually, yeah, maybe we could also say that, like, you know, if you're already registered so far, or if that's something that you're planning on doing later, and that sort of thing. But Ryan is registered and will be coming here to Grand Rapids. So John Athan.
Hey, Jason, it's Jonathan Mythaler. I live in Washington, D.C. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I just realized that you have John Athan as your. It's not John Athan.
Sorry about that. I live in Washington, D.C. I come from philosophy and theology, and I have obviously, I think Badiou is a major thinker that I'd be foolish to avoid or not to take this opportunity to have this class, and I appreciate it. And I'm mostly interested in the Greek tradition, mathematics, ontology, and maybe some ethical, theoretical stuff. But I'm really looking forward to it. I appreciate it.
Great. And is there any possibility you might come here if you do take it, or would you take it online?
No, I'm going to be stuck in D.C. I wish I could be.
Okay. Cool. All right. And David Allen.
Yeah. I teach at Temple. I've been familiar with Badiou's work for more than a decade. I've read a lot of him. We have, although I'm 15 years his junior, we have similar trajectories in life. I came out of a Maoist movement in the United States, and I still remain extraordinarily interested in Elan's work and his writings. And I'll be in Grand Rapids.
Oh, you will. Fantastic. Oh, yeah. We talked on the phone. So when you say Maoist tradition, do you mean like were you part of like a Maoist party, or you mean kind of Maoist philosophical tradition?
I'm sorry, I was reading one of the threads here. Can you say that again, please?
Oh, I was just wondering, you mentioned you had some background in the Maoist tradition, which Badiou does as well, and I was just wondering if that was, were you part of a particular political party or movement? Or?
Yeah, I was involved in a political movement coming out of SDS,
okay.
Leading into the RU and the RCP. I've long since broken from that, but very, very similar roots with influence from '68 and the Chinese Cultural Revolution.
Very interesting. Okay. Okay, Radwan, would you like to go?
Hi, my name is Radwan. I'm talking to you guys from Morocco. Most recently a EGS student, and I've missed Badiou's classes because I keep on going in June and he only teaches in August. So I figured this would be a good enough chance to get some time to hear it straight from his mouth.
Oh, where in Morocco are you, Radwan?
Casablanca.
Casablanca.
Uh-huh.
Great. Preston wants to know if you smoke cigarettes and do the Casablanca thing, the 2 fingers.
From the Humphrey Bogart, or just from everyone he knows from Casablanca?
I think he means something. Cool. Okay. So next we have Sam Green.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, hi. Glad to be here. My name's Sam. I'll be there in person, I am almost positive, so I'm looking forward to that. And Badiou is one of the thinkers that I've been wrestling with ever since I, decided to become a philosopher professionally, I guess. So I'm really excited to meet him and interact with him. I always assign the communist hypothesis in my classes, so it'd be interesting to be able to talk in person with him about that.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be great. Okay. Cool. So I guess what we'll do now, if I could ask Preston and Osfar to come up to the front table here. There's 3 chairs here, and I'll come join you. And if we can bring microphones, bring 2 microphones so that we all have microphones. And what we'll do now is we'll engage in a little short discussion about Manifesto for Philosophy 1 and 2. And also just generally, like, what is Badiou's philosophy about? Why is it interesting? Why should this be of interest to people in Grand Rapids or people anywhere coming in via Hangouts who would like to be part of it?
Great. So, well, this is great. Thanks, Jason. And I'd like to also thank the Kendall School of Art and Design, College of Art and Design, for partnering with us and allowing us to work with this space. And it's really great to be connected from all over the world. And what better thinker to explore than a thinker who thinks the universal, right? A certain kind of global theory. I'm really pleased to be with Oscar and Jason and everyone. So thanks.
Thank you. Actually, our purpose here, I think, is to have a conversation surrounding some basics of language. And already Jason posted some of the readings online, and from actually this interest in philosophy and also the second interest in philosophy. And this can be used as springboards for talking about issues relevant and relevant to us. But that's what we're doing. It's not that anybody's going to present a talk, formal talk, and then do something not like that. We're interested in having this informal conversation surrounding basics of life. So I think that still the challenge resides in making the basics of life accessible to common. In fact, as a matter of fact, 8-year-old daughter Salma was asking this question on the phone. So we were talking about Badiou, and she keeps hearing this thing about friends also talking about Badiou. So what is Badiou up today? What is Badiou up to? So I was telling her about how should I talk to my 8-year-old kid about Badiou, and so what he thinks. So think, we all think, he immediately said. So yeah, we all think, but we really think so systematically. So that's one question. So what does it mean to think systematically? That's the question. And why do we think? They have to add here, given Badiou's own tradition, its own nature. So Badiou thinks, all right, but Badiou does not just simply think, but he thinks in the interest of action. So Badiou basically is a philosopher, but also an activist. And I'm with our comrade Bruno Bastille, who rightly points out that Badiou's major, of course, for conditioning, dominance of philosophy, such as science. And love and, what was the book one? Science, art, love, and politics. And Bruno rightly points out that this is politics, which actually is constituted as persistent and so even more than mathematics. And then Alistair Nichols also points out that mathematics is something very, very crucial, very major philosophy. But still, it's politics that overrides that. So there's that
between what the basic condition of human interaction.
Sure. And for him, actually, this is another thing, this is very crucial. This Badiou talking about everything that is there in that. So falls politics, everything under philosophy. When philosophy is not just about everything. So Badiou himself, actually, in the manifestos, narrows down. When he speaks of, for instance, politics, is speaking of the politics of emancipation. When he speaks of, for instance, art, there too is poetry. And when he speaks of science, it's the mathematics. So that's, he also narrows down. So that's what I would say. politics of emancipation, in fact, Badiou uses these words instead of these words. Egypt became its major work in the event. Politics of emancipation is in the interest of the total emancipation of humanity in its empire. So those are Badiou's words. Some emancipation.
That connects us, Jason, that connects us off with what that connects us with what GCAS is about in many ways, and what Jason and I were forming GCAS with Oscar and 4 groups that came together around our school. Badiou as a thinker, as a living thinker, innovator, creator. It's very important, fundamentally important to what our mission and vision is, and how we actually go about emancipating ourselves from the structures that confuse us, from obscurity, from ways in which education has, in many respects, failed its mission with respect to emancipation. That in many ways, education, especially here in the States, the student is looked more upon as a means to an end, other than an end in themselves, an emancipatory possibility. So.
And I just want to say too, I mean, one of the first important customers made, I think that was when the Global Center was starting, we had some coming in on about should we really call it the Global Center, is that a little bit pretentious or is it a little too much to say it's global? Maybe we should be more humble and be a little more postmodern and not use these terms like global. I think that's what we aspire to. That was some of the responses that we got, but I think that if you look at Badiou's philosophy, he really has, he really develops a concept of the university. It's an entire book devoted to the resuscitation of the concept of universalism and of universality. Of course, it's not the simple kind of liberal universality that you find in Kant or somebody like that. It's a radical universality, probably much closer to what Marx called true universality as opposed to false universality. And so to at least aspire to globality, to at least aspire to universality, even if you could never actually reach it, just the fact that it's on your radar, that it's something that you are trying to do institutionally, I think that is, I think that we've actually been vindicated that was actually a great choice for knowledge.
And accidental, like the throw of the dice.
Right, it was
no way. Yeah. I'm wondering if David Allen, Professor Allen, could come on and say a few introductory words about Alain Badiou and the significance, maybe in 1 or 2 paragraph or something like that. Professor Allen? I think we're going to unmute you. Just one moment. Sorry, Professor Allen. Thanks. Because Professor Allen was Michel Foucault's student in 2 different occasions, and has a lot. I'm sorry, I'm bragging about you now. Sorry, but yeah. So I think it's important for us to get to kind of the context of thinkers who are part of us. So if you would you mind? We can hear you now.
Okay. Well, I heard the reference to Foucault. What would you like me to do?
Just say a few words about the significance of Badiou's work in your own scholarship as a professor of sociology.
Yeah. Well, it's similar to what other people have said. One, I use him in my classes, and I find that students are very responsive to a lot of the things I ask them to read. I suppose the best responses have been in relation to his book on Plato's Republic and more recently on Ahmed the Philosopher. Students love that. They love that work, and we had a fantastic week of seminars on it. I'm also particularly interested, I'm interested in Badiou the philosopher as well as other people, but for me, a great deal of my interest lies in the more political realm. You know, what comes after Marxism? What comes, you know, how do we make a kind of rupture with capitalism. And some of the issues that he's raised over the past 20 to 30 years with regard to that. I've thought a lot about them, in particular his own instrumental role in the rekindling of the communist movement. So that to me, those are to me some of the main resonances that Badiou's had in my life. Again, it largely revolves around my relationship with my students. That's where there's a lot of interest, and that's where I've largely devoted my work in relation to that. And we've read about 10 texts together over the last 4 years.
Thank you, Professor Allen. That's really helpful. Okay, great. So I guess, would you mind saying something about your own engagement with Badiou, Professor Allen?
Well, I have been interested in Badiou for quite some time. My interest again has to do with Badiou's own emancipation, the politics of emancipation, of humanities and what does that mean? And second interest, and this is something that we don't tend to talk much about, that is to do with how Badiou is received in what we call so-called third culture. At a level, there are all kinds of struggles, ongoing struggles, and the capitalist and the imperialist struggles that are there, and how does Badiou respond to those struggles that are there? And if we speak of universalism, then what kind of universalism? Again, talking about, Jason and I talked about this true universalism, false universalism, in the context of which one particular question not that I can address it particularly right here. The question is, can Europe do it? Does Europe continue to be a privileged site of the production of the new? And where does the new come from? What's the relationship between the new and this ongoing struggles? Are they all just losing their ways? Are they all just lost? And so on and so forth. In other words, so what's the relationship between the situation of Houston and an event? And again, in that context, another relevant question is this event autonomous, sovereign? Is it just a mystical, notion? Something, and there are mysticism and dogmatism and absolutism against Badiou, and Badiou also responded to this in a number of ways, in his own works and also in his interviews, and I'm ready to remember his interviews with Bruno Bastils, actually, which in fact constitute the appendix to a fantastic, fabulous book on Badiou, called Badiou and Politics, and there actually very explicitly Badiou says that he is not interested in this metaphysic of transcendence. He is against humanism, also against transcendence. Transcendence is not something, in other words, the event is not something that is absolutely a relation. It is related to the situation, some element of the situation. But then event, of course, is a rupture that opens up truths which actually constitute the subject. So those kinds of relationships that tends to establish. So yeah, and relate them to the ongoing struggles that are there in the chat.
Yeah, I think that this, the question that Oscar brought up originally here about universality and false versus true universality, for Marx for sure, pure European universality, or Europe always being the of center of something new that occurs would be basically false universality. It's not the world really. It's something to be in the name of the world. So that's why I said earlier that when we ever try to approach the world, we're trying to approach the universal. So I guess we're moving on now to the manifestos. Why are these two books so interesting to you as far as opposed to, there's some others that are like directly political, such as Metapolitics, some of the other books, and knowing that is of interest to you, I'm just curious why you felt that these two books were
so important for kind of general audience, you know, to get to.
Yes, I mean, there is a practical purposes. The interest of the course to find it useful. If you engage, can you hear me all right? Is everyone? Okay. If you can engage these two words, interest of philosophy, and second interest of philosophy, as someone himself pointed out, as well as the first interest is concerned, he jot it down. I mean, really, the memoirs of this object. So, jot it down, under it. So, we bring these thoughts to the fore. But I already said, the challenge to is actually making the basics of learning accessible. Well, the basics of learning are laid out. It's an interest of philosophy. How we began as well as a philosopher. What is the status of philosophy? And what is the center of it? So what are the center of philosophy? What are the conditions of philosophy? These are the questions of emphasis in the interest of philosophy. Now, what the basics laid down.
Why do you think it's important to manifest?
Yes, there is a political complication. It's not manifesto of philosophy, but for philosophy. And I should point out here very clearly that manifesto of philosophy is actually about restoring philosophy to its proper place. And it's true. He was responding actually. It's a modernist, rather postmodernist model at the end of philosophy. Philosophy is dead, it's over. Yoga said that. Even Heidegger was trying to in this superstition of metaphysics. And then others, the new philosophers were also declaring philosophy dead, philosophy was over, other things have taken over, and so on and so forth. And Badiou was responding to that. And was restoring it. No, philosophy is not dead. Philosophy will be dead. Philosophy itself is returned. It returns to philosophy itself, while in fact marking a rupture with what he calls the historicism. And that historicism that we misunderstood, well, some whole idea is ahistorical, so on and so forth. But that historicism is specifically meaning conjunction. There's a history. There's a history of philosophy. There is a history of philosophy that actually made philosophy redundant. And what you call attention, that philosophy, that history, need to have the rupture and philosophy is proper. What is that philosophy? Then, what you again say, that philosophy doesn't produce its own fruits. It doesn't produce fruits of its own. But philosophy can state that there are fruits. Philosophy can seize the fruits of the philosophy. Produce its own fruits. And this is one of the basic, I would say, principles of philosophy. And seizing fruits, where are the fruits? That's the question. Fruits arise in other areas, conditioning areas of philosophy, such as art, science, politics, and law. So the conditions of it. Now, another again question is philosophy then parasitical? Then Badiou there takes this position that it's not parasitical either. Philosophy is not sovereign and autonomous. Philosophy seizes fruits that arise in other areas, conditioning. However, philosophy is not parasitical. There he brings up this notion of suture. Philosophy cannot be suture to other areas. So, in fact, as far as the status of philosophy is concerned, I think again, we repeat the point being an important one. He restores philosophy to its proper. So this is about restoring. Now, second manifesto for philosophy was written 20 years later. So other things happened where philosophy was dead at that point, was declared up to be dead. Then philosophy later was everything. So that's about restoring philosophy. But everything, philosophy is about everything. Philosophy is actually about nothing. So it's not. And tries to restore, yes. And in fact, if you want to put these lines, and this line is actually from Russian, manifesto of philosophy of relevance. Let's simplify and let's go. Is arduous. 20 years ago, writing a manifesto amounted to saying, philosophy is something completely different from what you are told. Try then to see what you are not seeing today. Writing a manifesto is rather a matter of saying, yes, philosophy can be what you desire it to be, but try to really see what you see. So it's about also rescuing philosophy actually from this media distraction. It's against what might be called the coffee shop philosophizing. You know, I have a poem called Java and Dirty Dialectics in that particular poem. I take up on this notion, this coffee shop, practices coffee shop, philosophizing and so on. There.
Thanks, Oscar. That was great. And I mean, it's really interesting to me that we gather together in the name of thinker. It's so great, so powerful that we are, I think, desiring what Alain Badiou does as a thinker, as a creator. And I think it's also important because we are gathering around this, and because I think in some ways GCAS, the Global Center for Advanced Studies, is committed to the very same conditions of philosophy, the desire of philosophy, that it is important to, I think, have Badiou part of what we're doing. And that's very exciting. And if I could just take a moment to identify in general terms Badiou's philosophy and situate it with respect to what we're doing here and looking forward next month for Badiou sitting where we are sitting now. It seems to me that Badiou is obviously extraordinarily important figure for us. But why? There are many philosophers, but why is it that Badiou's philosophy separates his thought from other philosophers? If you notice that our context in the United States of America, our culture, in many respects, is allergic or phobic against philosophy. It's philosophophic. Even if you use the quick anecdote of the Harry Potter book. Is that the second one, the Sorcerer's Stone? Or the first Harry Potter book, when an editor on Madison Avenue in New York decided that the original title of the Harry Potter book, which was called Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, when it was printed in America, was to be called the Sorcerer's Stone, not the Philosopher's Stone. There is, in many ways, and living as a philosopher myself, and Jason, I think, can attest to this, many philosophers can attest to this in America, philosophy is treated like a profession and not a design. And as a result, when you do a graduate degree in philosophy, you become an expert in a certain field of philosophy. But heaven forbid you take philosophy seriously. So this would be point number one, that Badiou's philosophy is not a philosophy that sits well. In fact, his philosophy for Badiou is an uneasiness in philosophy departments. Because philosophy for Badiou in America has been a domesticated methodology, as opposed to a way of life. So that would be point number one, that Badiou's philosophy is a philosophy of design, a philosophy of life, a philosophy of action, as opposed to just simply a methodology that philosophers are in their offices.
Yes, I think you have made a very important point here. And I should also point out that there have been by now all kinds of technical discussions, extremely sophisticated sometimes necessary. Discussions surrounding mathematics and all that. And some of these discussions, of course, end up obscuring and occulting the actual sites of legitimate contradictions. Some of these discussions also depoliticize. So we at the GBA, as you know, we put it this way, it might sound a little ambitious. We want to repoliticize in the interest of our struggles and to all the forms and forces of oppression, injustice, and exploitation that characterize us.
Thank you. So point number one is philosophy for Badiou is not to be locked away in academia, but rather a way of life. In that sense, then, we're called to a life.
Sure. And I should also point out that we're not here to worship one another. Okay, we at the GCS don't worship some philosophers creating this art and so on and so forth, but we are interested in engaging with us and we'll raise questions. We will see what gaps there are in Badiou's work and what are those gaps. So critiques, of course, are very much critiques of Badiou too. Sure.
You could actually open it to a field. We want to do that.
Yeah.
No, not just not that we're answering your question, but as a conversation. Question and answer, which there is no answer except for ourselves. Yeah. We actually have a guest who has just arrived, I believe, from Chicago. Yes, I have. I'm very happy to be here. I'm Bruce in the I am senior citizen. I live in Chicago. I'm sorry. Yes, I live in Chicago, and I heard about the GCAS online. I graduated from college with my degree class in 1977, so I've been in what I call a self-designed independent seminar since then, which means I when I have a chance. So I'm very connected and intrigued by this, but I'm very excited to be here and be a part of this. So, yes.
What is the last name?
Medici.
Medici. Are you from the south side?
No, I tell you, I grew up on a farm in Badiou, Michigan, which is not what anyone would think, but there we are.
Okay, perfect.
And inheritance taxes in Italy are just terrible, so none of that well comes.
What is your interest in? You're coming here for the Badiou seminar?
I won't be able to. I'll attend the Badiou seminar online. I wanted to come today to have a chance to engage people, see people face to face, so this is great.
If you don't mind, I'd like to ask Councilman Osborne to just come join the crowd here. That way the camera can be all in the same place.
Yes, great idea.
We just have a group discussion.
So this discussion obviously involves people in the Hangout as well. So I'll try and mitigate everyone together. So actually, just to do that, maybe I'll start with somebody in the Hangout.
Yeah.
And that way we're not privileging the room quite as much. Okay. Try to have a good balance of. I mean, this actual event that we're in right now. I mean, what is happening right here is we're pretty much exactly equally in person and online right now, which is really kind of strange. Like this isn't online education. This isn't in-person education. This is hybrid education. This is a third new type of education that is neither online nor in person. It's irreducible to any particular medium. I don't think that's actually happened before.
I only wish I could add with the chat.
Yeah.
That's great. I wanted to ask, if you don't mind, Sherman, what do you think of when you think of philosophy? What does philosophy to you? So it's the love of wisdom, love of learning, and learning frees us from our predispositions and advances us. Does learning free us? Well, some learning might not free us, in fact.
Learning itself. way to balance in which you have to.
That's right. Yeah, and so as we learn more, we create even more boxes, and then hopefully keep deterritorialize and overturn these boxes. Matt, how would you define philosophy?
This is a way of life.
Philosophy is a way of life. Is anyone on the line who would like to enter the conversation, ask a question? Amy, are you getting Badiou down a little bit better from Arlington, Texas?
The easiest thing here would be if people would just unmute themselves when you're ready to speak. Otherwise, I can do it manually. But it would be nice if people would just unmute themselves. But I'm just going to turn up your volume, Amy, if you don't mind.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I would say I'm getting it a little bit. I read the readings for the day, and but I still think a lot of it's still a little bit difficult. I'm reading In Praise of Love, which I'm not sure is on the agenda, but I think that's fantastic.
Okay, there's a little difficulty hearing what you're saying. So did you read the Badiou, a little bit of Badiou? Is that what
Did you read, you were interested in his work on love, is that correct?
That's Badiou's dog.
That's my dog, sorry.
That's cool. Is that Professor Allen?
Yeah, Preston, one thing that I think is probably indicative of today and that we're going to be dealing with in the intensive week in Grand Rapids is that many of us are interested in Badiou from very different angles, theology, love, politics, art, and, all of these things are collected in Alain Badiou's work. But I think that it is a real challenge here for us to be talking on some kind of consensual level. Maybe consensual is not the right term, but some kind of similar level. Perhaps it's the readings that you assign, but it's a challenge. It's difficult to do that.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good point, Professor Allen, that we're approaching the subject of a thinker, from different angles. And I think that speaks about Badiou's thought in general, is that it is approachable from different angles. It's not just a monolithic perspective.
As a matter of fact, Badiou himself seems aware of that, I would say, actually. In fact, again, I'm referring to the interview with Steve said, but you said, one of us did raise this question, so there are 4 domains, separated from life, embodiment, in fact. They explicitly responded by saying, well, the challenge lies in weaving them, not in bringing them together, and that's what he is also interested in bringing them together. So how do you do that? Without using the relative autonomy of different positions and perspectives.
What kind of dog do you have, Professor Allen?
That's a pit bull, and he was just commenting on Badiou's In Praise of Love.
Yes, exactly. A pit bull, fantastic.
He's looking for his couple.
Okay, got it. Yes. He was split at the beginning of time, and now he's seeking out his mate in life. Nice. Okay, great. And Samil, did you want to what your thoughts are about Badiou and art, maybe? With your art, your undergraduate art.
No, superficial. Okay. I was saying that my training in philosophy was more superficial than history, but I was thinking that explaining more some of the biggest why I chose as because I really want to understanding what he says about art, but also a political subject also interests me as well. But I really don't have much anything to say really on that.
How would you define arts in your own education? What is arts in very simple terms? Or is it not simple?
I don't know. I struggle with that myself. But I mean, I have a history that I knew what it would be, but it's always evolving. Every time I learn more, it's just my understanding of art. My understanding of art evolves. So I don't know if anybody else has anything to say about that.
I'd like to pick up on your comment because I mean to give you some encouragement. Well, to me, a lot of what we're talking about is context of where we are in the world, and I think it is it's appropriate and dynamic and lively. You would say to yourself, what I thought art was a year ago, 10 years ago, 2 years ago, last week is different today. To me, looking backwards, I go back to the sense of context. Two things to say what something is. What is philosophy? What is the right form of government? What is a quantum right form of economy? It's a wrong question. It's what is it to you? What is it to you? What is it to you? And seeking consensus. We're dynamic people seeking consensus. Nietzsche was right? It's all will and the idea to reach consensus. So in my context to this, for you to say what you did, I think is exactly me, the right approach to take to art.
Well, I think this art is one of my favorite things. That the way that Badiou approaches art is really fascinating. Obviously, politics as well. Those are probably most interesting. What he says about art, he talks about, for example, cinema. So he'll talk about how cinema. This was actually one of the inspirations for GCAS early on. Was basically what he comes down to is he says that when did cinema emerge? Cinema emerged in the time of Dadaism, Surrealism, all of these new avant-gardes that emerged, and yet cinema as a medium is a mass medium, just like Google Hangouts is a mass medium. The internet is a mass medium. But is it possible to be both mass and avant-garde? So that the avant-garde, the world of avant-garde art or cutting-edge art is not simply restricted to a small number of people or is only intended for those who know and that sort of thing. But rather we would actually use mass mediums such as film and the internet, for example, and use those in order to create avant-garde spaces that are broadly accessible to large numbers of people, to the majority of the world, would be the hope. So this is all in an essay called Cinema as a Democratic Emblem. You can find that just like Google. But it is in the Badiou course Facebook group also. So, yeah, that's the other major thing that he says about art that I liked. And I got interested in this because of my friend John Mouse, who is a musician who does sort of like 80s sounding music. He would have heard me say it that way. That's not how he really sees it, but the general public. So he has an album called "We Must Become the Intimate Censors of Ourselves," and this is a quote from Badiou's 10 pieces on or 15 pieces on art. And what Badiou says about art in those 15 pieces, he says that innovation is sort of the status quo now, because every year we have a new iPhone, a new car, a new software update. These things are constantly happening. So innovation in form is not really radical anymore. What we need is innovation in content. So you can take a form that already exists and then infuse that existing form with totally new, totally radical content. At least that's how I understood it. So one of the things that requires is that we don't just constantly. You think of Facebook this idea that we should always share everything in every single file we have. Rather, it's more like, no, we should actually be more selective. We should actually try to think through thoughts and selectively put out ideas in ways that are actually well considered and digested and that sort of thing. That's 15 pieces on art. People that's also an and definitely check out John Knox's music. Because that album in particular was written under the heavy influence of Badiou.
That brings up the question of Badiou's own position with regard to old philosophy and its condition of dominance. What we need is the restricted exception of truths and not the freedom of the people. What we talked about is innovation, every different creativity, ongoing, and so on and so forth. Are they really need? So that's the question. To the extent that Badiou has theorized, poetry, in fact, particularly, states that art is the center of the production of truth. In other words, art has to do with rupture with the existing order of things, the creation of a new world within you. So that's what art is about. That's what a poem is about. To an extent.
I was wondering if we could have Catherine, who just joined our Hangout, briefly introduce herself. Hey, Catherine. If you could unmute yourself, that would be great. Just say hi. Go ahead.
Hi.
Hello. Where are you coming from?
I'm from Colombia.
In Colombia. And what city in Colombia?
I study a PhD in social studies.
Fantastic. And have you been interested in Badiou for a while now?
I don't hear you good.
Okay. Well, thank you. It's really great to have you with us, and thanks very much for saying hi.
Very thanks, all of you.
Great. Fantastic. Okay. So, do we have any other final questions from anybody before we wrap things up for today? Maybe Jason. I would like Jason to tell us a little bit more about the film. But if anybody has any comments, suggestions, ideas, please feel free to chime in.
Yeah, we really want to make sure that we want to make sure everyone gets their questions answered. So, any questions that people may have about this course, like what is the course about, or what are the conditions of the course, like where will you stay, that kind of thing. Please definitely feel free to pose any questions you have. That's a major reason for this. Can we maybe just run through and just make sure that
yes.
Unmute each person?
Okay, sure.
Like in order to see if they
all right.
Questions.
So the class, I just unmuted anyone, and just feel free to jump in and ask the question. Part of the strangeness of this forum is that there's a resistance to speaking if you're online, and we want to try to overcome that resistance.
We could even just start with. Catherine, did you have any questions about the course? Anything that you'd like us to correct you? Catherine,
David, go ahead.
Oh, well, one thing, you asked me before to put this into the context of Foucault. I remember when Foucault came to the United States and held 2 seminars. What was noticeably absent was any women at the seminar, and this has always been kind of a problem, where these seminars tend to be almost uniformly male, and I noticed that there were at least 3 women who were participating, which really is, quite a refreshing change.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in any patronizing way. I just mean, the same old faces is kind of frustrating. And to see new faces is really a very positive thing.
Yeah, that's a great to point out, David. Thank you. Yeah. So in terms of the class itself, just to rehearse the basics, we're going to, each day is going to be kind of like a decade of Alain Badiou's thought, in which he'll talk about his relationship to his masters, Lacan and Jean-Paul Sartre out there in the 60s, and then we'll go from there the next day into the 70s and then into the 80s, and proceed throughout the arc of his career and read selected texts that isolate I think the essence of what his thinking was during those decades, and how, in the end, all those cloisters of ideas can be expressed so that someone who has no idea about Badiou can be part of this, and also others who have been familiar with his work for many years can also squeeze out and gain access to knowledge through his work. So if you have any ideas or questions, feel free to jump in. So
maybe we can just ask each person online. I just want to make sure people feel.
Okay, people. Okay.
Amy Higgins, do you have any questions? Looks like your volume is up if you want to pose anything. John DC.
Okay.
David Allen, Sam Green, do you have any questions?
Wait, Sam's.
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you, though.
Okay, great. And wait, I'm going to turn John's volume up. John, are you there? Do you have any queries, ideas? Okay. All right, great.
So I'm going to move on now to the film. So the final thing I just want to mention is that we are doing a film that's called Badiou Alive. And the inspiration for the title comes from Gilles Deleuze's essay Immanence Alive, which kind of deals with the question of biography, because it would be a biographical film, because the course would be a biographical course in many respects. And Badiou himself had very interesting things to say about biography. There's a quote where he talks about Nietzsche's famous statement that whenever people philosophize, philosophy is always an unconscious form of biography. So whenever you philosophize, you're sort of philosophizing from your own standpoint, according to Nietzsche. And Badiou kind of reversed that, and he said, well, maybe that's true, but perhaps it also works the opposite way, where a biography that's written by, or you could say in this case, a course that is taught by the philosopher himself is itself a form of philosophy, even though it may be biographical. It could actually be the other way around. It actually be philosophical. And so that's what the film will deal with. The film will basically cover, the entirety of his work, same with the course will. Oh, by the way, Preston, if you wouldn't mind checking the chat, there's 14 messages.
Yeah.
So there might be some things in there to address. But so the film will basically do exactly what the course does, and will be run by Gaurav Kalyan, who's going to be the director. He's an LA-based director, and then we'll also have Gaurav Kalyan and myself who will be sort of kind of pushing in different directions and that kind of thing. So I don't really know what else to say about it. The most important thing is that we need to raise enough funds to bring Gaurav here, and to pay for the equipment, to pay for their lodging, and just for their labor of putting them together. So we have an Indiegogo. So if you just Google Badiou and comma Indiegogo, it's kind of like Kickstarter. Within the first day, we raised about $1,000, which was great, and we're almost up to 2,000 now. Pretty soon there will be some very exciting developments happening with that. We just got reshared by Verso Books, so all kinds of things like that.
And what about the Robert Redford Foundation, or what's it called, the festival?
Yeah, we announced that yet.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. But, I mean, that should be happening very soon, but we're just going to wait until that actually happens before we go too much into detail about it. But,
great. Fantastic.
So, do you want to wrap us up, Preston?
Sure. Okay, so everyone, thank you so much for being part of this. It's a great experience the past hour. I'd like to especially thank the Kendall College of Art and Design for allowing us to occupy this space and partnering with us. I'd like to thank Bruce for coming all the way from Chicago, Jason for organizing all of this. It's an amazing organization, and Osfar for our leader in GCAS, Matt and my boys and Cameron, Amber for being part of this. Samil, thank you all, and yeah. So let's stay in touch. If you have any questions, feel free to follow up with Jason or Osfar. It'd be really great. We're looking forward to being part of this. Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, Corporal T is dead.